Hey, folks, welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Now, some encounters are defined by fear, but others are defined by something far stranger and far harder to explain. Presence without threat. Now, watchfulness without aggression, intervention without a clear motive. Now, across cultures and centuries, people have described unseen protectors. Guardians that appear at moments of vulnerability, sentinels that enforce boundaries in wild places, and intelligences that seem to step in when something else is closing in. Now, tonight we're going to hear 6 accounts. Some are modern, some are rooted in long-held traditions, and some read like a warning, and some feel like a rescue. I'm going to present each narrative exactly as it was supplied without edits, and after every account, I'll add an investigative insert, maybe a transition, and a summary with it. So you decide what these beings were. Now, this first account, in early June 2020, during the first months of the pandemic, a 14-year-old witness experienced an encounter that would permanently alter their understanding of presence, protection, and reality itself. Sometime between midnight and 1 in the morning, the witness was lying awake in bed when they felt the distinct sensation of someone sitting down beside them. Now, at first, it was dismissed as a half dream or reflexive movement of sleep. They lay down. Then it happened again and again. 2 or 3 times in the same night, the bed shifted with an unmistakable weight of another person. Now, the experience escalated when the witness felt their shoulders being shaken while sitting upright in bed, eyes closed. When they opened them, they were no longer alone. A young man was sitting beside them on the bed, silent and still. The detail that troubled the witness most came immediately afterwards. They were sleeping on the top bunk of a bunk bed. Reaching it required climbing through the lower bunk and up a ladder that always creaked and rattled. That night, though, there was no sound. No footsteps and no movement, no indication that anyone had entered the room or the house, which had been locked due to pandemic restrictions. Now, after several minutes of silence, the figure turned and looked directly at the witness. Startled but coherent, the witness began asking questions. Who was he? Was this a dream? How had they entered the house? How had he climbed up without making any noise? The young man answered calmly and deliberately. He stated that he was real. He was not a product of imagination, illness, or a psychological break. He acknowledged that he could not explain how he had entered or moved through the house, nor had he reached the top bunk without sound. He added that not everyone would be able to see him and that this appearance would not happen again in this way. He said he had come because it was necessary to make himself known. Now, most strikingly, he reassured the witness that what they were experiencing was not schizophrenia, not a psychological episode or psychotic episode, and not the result of mental illness. He then shared two things that the witness would never forget. First, he told them not to be afraid. Though he moved silently and appeared without warning, he was real, and he was there to stay for a while. He explained that his presence would no longer be visible, but that he would remain close for a short time. Now, the witness later described feeling him nearby for several days after the encounter before the sensation gradually faded. And second, he gave his name and age. His name was Felix. He said that he was 20 or 21. The witness took in every detail of his appearance. He was tall, approximately 1.8 meters tall. He had dark blonde to light brown hair, light skin, and light brown eyes, though the witness was uncertain about the exact color. He wore a black long-sleeve shirt beneath a white shirt and wool-like pants. Now, the image became so deeply imprinted that the eyewitness believes they would again recognize him instantly if they ever saw him again. Now, Felix stated that he had been sent for a reason but refused to explain what it was. Now, when the witness asked why he had appeared bedside or beside them in the bed rather than elsewhere, Felix responded that the witness could ask him to leave at any time, but the request had to come from them. He said that for the next few days he would not leave because he had been sent to do something specific. He added that he would stay that night to watch over the witness and ensure that no one approached. Only later did the witness reflect on how unsettling that statement truly was. The house was locked. It was in the middle of the night. The world was shut down due to the pandemic. Who could possibly have been coming near them? Now, Felix remained with the witness throughout the night, although he was only seen visually once. His presence continued afterward. For the next 3 or 4 nights, the witness felt as though someone was lying beside them, holding them, offering warmth and reassurance. It was described as a silent embrace, comforting rather than frightening. But then abruptly, the sensation stopped. The witness believed Felix had finally gone, but over time they realized he had not truly left. The intensity was gone, but the sense of accompaniment remained. Even now, the witness reports feeling that someone is with them when walking outside, making plans, speaking to others, or going about daily life. They do not see him. They do not hear him. But they feel him. And to this day, the witness cannot define what Felix was. They do not know whether he was a spirit, a guardian, an angelic figure, or a psychological anomaly, or something entirely unknown. All they know is that one night, during a time of global fear and isolation, a silent figure appeared beside them, claimed to be real, claimed to be sent, watched over them, and never entirely left. and whatever Felix was, his presence continues to be felt. Now, this case contains multiple indicators of a structured protection event rather than a random anomaly. The entity appears once in full visual form, delivers targeted reassurance about mental stability, and then transitions into a lingering but non-visual presence. The phrase, "they sent me," matters. It suggests assignment, hierarchy, and purpose. The witness never reports coercion, only calm oversight. Even the unsettling detail, the insistence that no one would approach, implies a perceived threat the witness was not aware of. But not all protectors appear in the bedroom. Some operate like boundary enforcement units, occupying landscapes, watching roads, and regulating who passes and who does not. Now, if this account is taken at face value, Felix functions as a temporary personal guardian with a residual presence that fades but does not entirely disappear. The unanswered question is the one that haunts the witness most. What was he protecting them from? Now, this next case, approximately 1 year prior to coming forward, the witness experienced a series of events during a solo hiking trip that, while unsettling, did not fundamentally alter their skeptical view of the paranormal or cryptid phenomena. The witness emphasized that they do not strongly believe in ghosts, cryptids, or related subjects, and that the experience did not convert them into a believer. What it did leave behind, however, was the sequence of events that could not satisfactorily explain. Now, the hike was planned as a 2-week solo excursion similar to one the witness had completed before. The first 2 days passed without incident and were described as calm and routine. Now, the first anomaly occurred during the second night. The witness went to sleep between 9 and 10 in the evening. Around 2 in the morning, they partially woke up after noticing a faint odor of rotting meat. Now, the smell was not overpowering, but unusual enough to be noticed in the open wilderness. Now, at first, the witness attempted to ignore it and turned to sleep. Now, shortly afterward, they became aware of movement outside the tent. Now, given the odor and the sounds, the witness initially assumed an animal might be nearby, possibly a carnivore. Now, still half asleep, they decided to check, partly to ensure that it wasn't a bear. The night was well lit by the bright moon, allowing clear visibility outside the tent. Now, when the witness opened their eyes, they saw a vague silhouette of a tall, lanky humanoid shape standing near the tent. Now, despite the strangeness of the sight, the witness did not feel immediate fear or danger. They were armed and believed that they could protect themselves if necessary. Now, after roughly a minute, the figure moved away. At the same time, the odor vanished. Although unsettled, the witness stayed awake for approximately an hour, then nothing further occurred and they returned back to sleep. Now, the following day, the witness noticed a persistent sensation of being watched. It was described not as panic or fear, but as an awareness of something potentially dangerous nearby. Despite this, the witness did not feel directly threatened and continued the hike. The experience weighed on them, however, and they set up camp earlier than usual that evening and delayed going to sleep to remain alert. Now, around 1 in the morning, the odor returned. Now, this time, the witness was fully awake. They gripped their firearm and scanned the surrounding area. Instead of seeing a figure, they observed a pair of yellowish eyes at a distance. Now, the eyes remained visible for several minutes before disappearing. When they vanished, the odor dissipated. The sense of being watched faded, and after about an hour, the witness fell asleep. Now, the next day, the feeling returned, but again, without a sense of immediate danger. Nonetheless, the witness decided to cut the trip short. They began heading back, choosing a more indirect route. That night passed without incident. On the following day, while crossing a large clearing, the odor of decay returned. This time, the witness saw no one or anything nearby. The open terrain offered no obvious place for concealment, which caused the witness to panic slightly and increase their pace. And as midday approached, the smell intensified. The witness noted that they had poor eyesight and typically do not wear glasses. Now, looking to their left, they briefly saw a gray humanoid figure at a distance. Alarmed, they put on their glasses. When they looked again, the figure was gone. Now, at that point, the witness decided to leave the area as quickly as possible. They began running, convinced something was following them. After covering a significant distance, they entered a small clearing that felt remarkably different. The odor had stopped. The sense of being watched vanished. The clearing contained several small boulders. Sitting calmly on one of them was a man estimated to be in his late 40s or early 50s. He was dressed in plain, everyday clothing that did not resemble hiking gear. No backpack, tools, or supplies were visible nearby. The detail that immediately stood out to the witness was the man's eyes. They were green, but not in a reflective and unnatural way. Instead, the witness described them as having a brightness that's like it was seen in a children's eyes. The witness, exhausted from running, was told by the man to sit and rest. Now, without hesitation or suspicion, they complied. The two spoke casually for some time, discussing hiking and nature. The man smiled often and projected a calm, friendly demeanor that put the witness to ease. Now, after the witness recovered, the man offered to help set up camp in the clearing. He demonstrated notable skill in starting a fire, and they shared tea together. Eventually, the man stood, said it had been nice talking, and stated that he needed to leave. He didn't explain where he was going or why. He simply walked away. Now, that night passed quickly. The witness heard nothing beyond normal forest sounds. Now, when they woke the next morning, they felt unusually refreshed. They packed up camp and continued along the trail. For the remainder of the hike, there was no odor, no sense of being watched, and no further disturbances. The witness admitted that this was the first time they had shared the experience in full detail. In the past, they explained it away as an animal encounter because it was easier for others to accept. This account, however, reflects exactly what they recall happened. They do not claim to know what followed them through the forest. Now, they do not claim also to know who the man in the clearing was. They only know that something watched them, something seemed to pursue them, and that the experience ended abruptly in the presence of a stranger whose arrival coincided with peace, safety, and normalcy in returning to the woods. Now, take that same concept, intervention in a wild place, and amplify it, not as a single calm figure, but as an organized group of towering sentinels that seemed to manage a corridor of land like it belonged to them. Now, this reads like a pursuit event that gets terminated by a third party. The man with green eyes functions as a stabilizer, de-escalation presence, and possibly a guardian proxy. The witness reports a hard environmental shift, suggesting a boundary line or an enforced safe zone. Now, this next account. After living for nearly 6 years near Traverse City, Michigan, the witness had grown accustomed to long solitary walks through the surrounding countryside. Now, one of these routes followed a paved road that intersected with a fire road climbing into the hills. Beyond the intersection, the pavement led into a sparsely populated wooden stretch where only 3 houses sat far apart from one another. Now, between those homes and the road lay a quarter-mile expanse of dense forest. From the roadside, a dilapidated and abandoned farmhouse and shed were clearly visible. It was in this area that the witness first sensed that they were being watched. Now, the feeling did not occur just once. It happened repeatedly, 4 times in total. Although unsettling, the witness did not feel threatened. Instead, a strange calm accompanied the sensation. Over time, they began perceiving something else, not with their physical eyes, but through what they described as the mind's eye. The more frequently they walked that route, and the calmer they remained, the clearer these perceptions became. They began to see towering beings, usually 4 or 5 of them at a time. Each stood an estimated 10 to 12 feet tall. Their forms were massive, even due to the immense bodies or heavy fur-covered coats. Every one of them had a different animal skull for a head: a steer, a ram, an elk, a moose, and an ibex. Their bodies were wrapped in thick animal fur of varying colors, and their arms ended in elongated human-like hands that appeared unnaturally long. Now, the group was always led by the figure with the steer skull. Now, when they appeared, they would often circle the witness. Despite their imposing size and appearance, the behavior was not aggressive or frightening. The witness received a clear impression that these beings were protecting them. When the witness attempted to ask what danger they were being protected from, no answer was given. Not long after these encounters began, the witness noticed a disturbing change during their walks. They started experiencing time slips. The terrain around their home was physically demanding, with steep climbs in 2 to 3 possible directions leading back. Yet the witness began returning home in a fraction of the expected time. Concerned, the witness's wife urged them to stop listening to music while walking, suspecting it might be causing disorientation or distraction. So the witness complied. Now, one morning, while walking back along the route where the beings were known to appear, 2 figures suddenly emerged: the ram and the ibex. This time, the encounter felt different. Fear replaced calm. The witness received a forceful impression that they had been warned not to walk this path anymore and had ignored those warnings. The beings conveyed anger and issued a final message: if the witness continues to disregard their pleas, that they be left utterly alone and to their peril. The 2 figures slowly bent down toward the witness. The witness did not want to look into their empty eye sockets of the skulls, but felt compelled to do so. And at that moment, a deafening, screeching sound erupted, like white noise or intense static. Then abruptly, everything went silent. The witness rubbed their eyes and continued walking home, disoriented and confused, unable to understand why their surroundings felt wrong. Now, upon reaching the yard, they were met by their wife, who was visibly frantic. She demanded to know where they had been. The witness responded defensively, reminding her that morning walks were routine. Something in her expression made it clear that something was seriously wrong. She asked if the witness knew what time it was. He did not. She told him it was noon. The witness had left for their walk at 7 in the morning. The route should have taken no longer than an hour and a half, with the latest return time of around 8:30. After discussing everything that had happened, both agreed that continually to walk that route was unwise. Now, while the witness still goes outside regularly, their walks are now brief, usually lasting no more than 30 minutes. There has been no further direct contact with these beings. However, the witness remains convinced they are still present, watching over the woods and observing people who pass nearby. Whatever the sentinels were protecting the witness from remains unknown. What is known that the warnings were real, and this time they will be followed. Now, this is one of the most direct modern examples of a sentinel group acting like an enforcement unit. The initial phase contains calm contact, circling behavior, and a protective message that withheld details. Then the case shifted into a temporal anomalies and final warning. The white noise event and disorientation point toward a forced cognitive interruption, the type of mechanism witnesses sometimes describe during missing time events. The warning, utterly alone to their peril, implies that they were simply keeping the witness company. They were acting as a buffer against something else. Now, move from the woods of Michigan to the hills of Montana, where two different forms appear within the same landscape. One small and green, the other towering and antlered, and both behave like territorial presences. Now, this is not random imagery. The witness reports consistent, repeated encounters, structured leadership, a shift of reassurance to enforcement, and immeasurably real-world time discrepancy confirmed by another person. Now, if the case is true, the sentinels were managing access to the corridor, and the witness crossed an invisible line. Now, before we continue, if you're enjoying tonight's presentation and want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us reach more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. And make sure to click the notification button so you won't miss any of our live shows. Now, for countless generations, native peoples across North America have spoken of large, powerful forest beings that exist alongside them long before modern society appeared. Now, these entities were never treated as curiosities, campfire monsters, or misunderstood animals. Instead, they were acknowledged presences woven directly into oral history, spiritual law, and lived experience. And when examined collectively, these accounts form a continuous cultural record that challenges the idea that Bigfoot or Sasquatch is a modern legend or a simple case of misidentification. Now, what follows is an expanded examination of native encounters and interpretations, drawing from historical tradition, first-hand testimony, and modern observations that continued into the present day. Now, here's the native perspective on forest beings, the White Mountain Apache encounters in eastern Arizona. Now, for decades, members of the White Mountain Apache Nation quietly documented encounters in the dense forest of eastern Arizona. These reports were not shared publicly until relatively recently, when tribal representatives acknowledged a noticeable increase in activity that warranted outside attention. Witnesses described classic indicators: large footprints pressed deep into the mud, clumps of hair, dark hair, caught on fencing and vegetation, nighttime vocalizations that shattered the silence with piercing screams. The beings were consistently described as tall, black bipedal figures moving with long, confident strides through the rugged terrain. One longtime resident recalled abruptly braking her vehicle when a massive creature crossed the roadway near Sibique. When she turned back moments later, it had vanished without a trace. Importantly, Apache witnesses do not describe overt aggression. The being was viewed as territorial but not hostile, reinforcing the belief that it was established forest presence rather than a predatory threat. Now, the story of the Oma, which is the boss of the woods in Northern California. Now, among the Hupa and Hurak people of Northern California, the forest spirit is known as Oma, often translated as boss of the woods. Unlike sensationalized portrayals, Oma is regarded as an intelligent and dominant entity that governs its territory and responds selectively to human intrusion. Now, in one striking modern account, a physically large human observer deliberately stepped beside a fresh footprint found on reservation land. Within hours, additional massive footprints appeared around his own. One impression appeared to show a finger pressed directly into the human footprint itself. Now, elders interpreted the incident not as a threat, but as a deliberate response. Oma had assessed the intruder, acknowledged his presence, and chosen avoidance rather than confrontation. Notably, the following harvest season passed without crop damage, reinforcing the belief that the being had withdrawn entirely from the area. Now, this account lines with many native interpretations as Sasquatch evaluate risk, recognize strength, and prefer separation over conflict. Wendigo, stone giants, and northern forest terrors across Algonquin, Iroquois, and related cultures stories persist of enormous beings that were deeply feared. One referred to as the Wendigo, Kokatshi, or the stone giants. These entities were described as swift, immensely strong, foul-smelling, and dangerous. Descriptions frequently include towering height, matted hair, blood-red eyes, and an overpowering stench of decay. Early European explorers documented these stories with striking consistency. Now, one chronicler noted that every tribe he encountered feared the creature and described it as nearly identical terms. Now, in Vermont and Quebec, later settlers echoed these traditions, reporting encounters with upright bipedal beings that moved too quickly and intelligently to be bears. Similar reports persist to the present across the upper Midwest and eastern Canada, suggesting a persistent regional phenomena rather than isolated folklore. Now, the Lofa of the Chickasaw people. Chickasaw oral history speaks of the Lofa, a long-haired forest being whose name roughly translates to Skinner. In one account, a lone hunter entered the territory that was not his own and was confronted directly. When the hunter refused to leave, the Lofa overpowered him through sheer physical strength and an overwhelming odor. Rather than killing him, the being suspended the man in a tree and left him alive. Now, this detail is critical. The Lofa enforced dominance in territorial boundaries without unnecessary violence. In the Chickasaw tradition, the Lofa was not portrayed as evil, but as an enforcer of natural law, and even sometimes as a protector. The Kushtaka encounters in southeast Alaska. Now, among the Tlingit and neighboring people of Alaska, the Kutashka is known as a shape-shifting forest entity capable of appearing partially human and partially animal. Modern encounters continued to mirror traditional warnings. Now, in one contemporary case near Juneau, multiple witnesses encountered a pale, elongated humanoid with reflected eyes that pursued them on all fours through snow-covered forest terrain. The creature emitted a chilling mix of screams and howls that demonstrated extreme speed and coordination. Now, these encounters align closely with older Katushka traditions that warn of beings capable of mimicry, pursuit, and psychological manipulation. Now, we also have the Muna, Catania, and the boundary crossing beings. Not all native traditions view Sasquatch purely as physical. The Mono people of California describe different types of forest beings associated with elevation and terrain, some accompanied by overwhelming odor and unseen pursuit. Now, Kootenai's spiritual teachings go further, suggesting Sasquatch exists partially outside the physical world. Elders describe it as capable of selective visibility, shape-shifting, and psychic communication. In these traditions, Sasquatch is not an undiscovered animal, but a being that crosses boundaries between worlds. Now, this perspective closely mirrors modern ultra-terrestrial and interdimensional hypotheses that seek to explain the creature's ability to appear and disappear without leaving consistent physical evidence. Now, this section function as an interpretive spine for the episodes. Across nations, the same theme recur: territorial intelligence, selective engagement, and boundary enforcement. These traditions do not treat the beings as a novelty. They treat them as neighbors with rules. They also note that the overlap with earlier accounts tonight, the odor marker, the rock throwing, pursuit behavior, and sudden disappearance. When multiple unrelated cultures describe similar traits across centuries, it forces a serious question. Are we looking at a biological animal, a category of beings, or intelligence that manifests differently depending on the region and context? As well, many people believe that these beings are also protectors, or sentinels, or guardians. Now we move from wilderness and tradition into the private space of a bedroom, where the witness encounters entities that look alien but feel protective and communicate without speaking at all. Now, in July 2013, a woman in south central Pennsylvania experienced an encounter that would fundamentally alter her understanding of belief, reality, and the unseen forces that had never previously considered possible. At the time, the witness was recovering from an injury. She was not taking medication and had not consumed alcohol and was resting quietly in her bedroom, focused solely on healing. She emphasized her clarity of mind before, during, and after the event. Without warning, 4 entities appeared inside the room. They did not enter through doors or windows. According to the witness, they moved through the air and directly through the walls. Each figure was extraordinarily tall, estimated between 8 and 9.5 feet tall. Their stature was such that they seemed to duck within the room's confines. Now, the beings were white in appearance and insect-like in form. Their bodies were extremely thin but muscular, giving the impression of both fragility and strength. Their most striking feature was their eyes, enormous, protruding, and completely black. The witness described the covering of parts of their body as goldish colored, smooth, and reflective. Now, despite their unsettling appearance, the emotional impact of their presence was not fear. Instead, the witness felt an overpowering sense of love and compassion. She compared that emotional tone to that of a parent caring for a child. There was no hostility, threat, or sense of intrusion. The atmosphere felt protective and deeply reassuring. One of the beings communicated directly with her, not through spoken word, but telepathically. The message repeated in her mind, urgent and reassuring. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. She can see us. She can see us. Don't be scared. Now, the witness understood that the communication was directly directed both at her and among the entities themselves. She was fully aware, observing them as they stood around the room, hearing their thoughts rather than sounds. The entire encounter lasted only a few minutes, and after that, the witness lost consciousness. And when she awoke the next morning, the beings were gone. Still shaken, she told her mother what had happened. Her mother responded calmly, explaining that she had prayed for guardian angels to surround her during her recovery. Now, the witness's husband reacted very differently. He warned her not to talk about the experience, telling her that if she did, people would think she's mentally unstable and have her institutionalized. Conflicted and frightened by the implications, the witness confided only in her best friend. It was then that she learned something deeply unsettling. Her friend revealed that another young woman in her town had once repeated seeing aliens and was subsequently forced into a psychiatric hospital by her family. The witness was stunned. She had never heard this story before. The realization that others might have had similar experiences and suffered severe consequences for speaking about them frightened her into silence. And for years afterwards, she avoided describing what the beings looked like. When she did speak of the encounter at all, she referred to them as angels, leaving out their insect-like appearance. In the years since, she attempted to research similar encounters. She has found many accounts of frightening or hostile insectoid beings, but very few describing compassion, love, and protection. What she remained certain of is this: the entities were telepathic, physically present and unmistakably real. She reports no UFO sightings, no abduction experiences, and no prior belief in extraterrestrial paranormal phenomena until that night, and she considered herself a skeptic. Now, she described the beings as being as real as a glass of water and she was holding at the time. Whatever they were, they appeared only once, and they changed her life forever. Now, the account reverses the usual expectations. Insectoid-looking entities are often framed as threatening. Here, the dominant emotional signature is compassion and reassurance. The telepathic message also contains a revealing phrase, "She can see us." That suggests the witness's perception mattered to them and that being seen was unusual. The blackout raises two possibilities. It could be physiological shock, or it could be an imposed shutdown to end the event. The mother's prayer added a third factor, intentional spiritual petition shortly before an encounter with beings that behaved like guardians. Now, we have heard of bedroom protectors and wildland sentinels. The next case merges both worlds. A road encounter with a winged entity and the beginning of a prolonged series of events that appear to follow the witness's home. In April 2017, I was given an uncommon opportunity to formally present investigative findings from a case that would ultimately shape my working theory on the origin and the function of the Mothman phenomena. What began as a single terrifying roadside encounter soon expanded into a prolonged series of events involving attachment, poltergeist activity, and what appeared to be an ancient earthbound intelligence tied to the region surrounding Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Now, the initial encounter occurred on a remote stretch of U.S. Route 219, also known as the Seneca Trail, just north of Thomas, West Virginia. A father and his 3-year-old daughter returning home late in the evening after visiting family in Davis. The route was familiar. He had driven it hundreds of times before. And as his daughter sang softly along with the radio, he noticed movement ahead of the vehicle roughly 60 or 70 yards away, aligned with the treetops. The object was barely visible, illuminated only by the outer arc of the vehicle's high beams. He slowed slightly, allowing his eyes to adjust. What he saw was moving towards him. Without sound, the object closed the distance to roughly 30 to 40 yards. The first clearly identifiable feature was the unmistakable movement of enormous wings. The being flapped several times, abruptly halting its forward momentum, then descended and landed directly in the roadway ahead of the vehicle, as if intentionally blocking their way. At an estimated distance of 20 yards, the witness could clearly see what stood before them. The entity was humanoid, standing 7 to 8 feet tall with folded wings rising an additional 2 to 3 feet above its head. Its build was massive and muscular, comparable to that of a professional bodybuilder. Its head was hairless. Its skin was ashen gray. Covering its head, torso, and arms were black tribal-like markings that appeared tattooed into the skin. Its eyes were entirely black. At that moment, the child became aware the being began screaming hysterically. The father described his thoughts racing between disbelief, fear, concern for his daughter, and the urgent need to escape. Throughout this time, the entity remained motionless and silent, staring directly at them. Now, the encounter lasted approximately 10 to 15 seconds, though it felt far longer. Without warning, the being opened its mouth. A moment later, emitted a piercing high-frequency shriek. As it screamed, it unfurled its wings, which were leathery, black, and bat-like, with ragged, tattered edges along the lower portions. It flapped powerfully, lifted several feet into the air, then accelerated upward and vanished over the vehicle. The witness immediately sped away, and no further contact occurred that night. But that encounter marked the beginning of a far more disturbing sequence of events. Shortly afterward, I was contacted by the witnesses, Jeff and Crystal Drenning, a cooperative and sincere couple who described escalating activity following a visit to the TNT plant bunker complex outside Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Now, their visit included an EVP session inside one of the middle bunkers of the former West Virginia Ordnance Work Facility. And I have heard the recordings, and I still have them, but I don't have permission to release them. I may one day. We'll see. Anyway, Crystal reached out to me in April 2017, requesting assistance that what she described as malevolent activity erupted in their home. Over several remote view sessions, I determined that the family was dealing with two distinct energies. The first appeared to be an ancient earthbound intelligence, likely originated from the early indigenous inhabitants of the region. This entity was responsible for anomalous EVP recordings captured at the bunker and appeared to have followed the family from Point Pleasant. I believe the same intelligence was directly involved in Jeff's roadside encounter with the winged being. The second presence exhibited poltergeist-like activity and behavior and was most likely already attached to the residents before they moved in. The interaction between these two forces created an unstable and increasingly hostile environment. Now, through my research and investigative work, I developed the theory that the Mothman and similar winged entities are not biological cryptids in the traditional sense. Rather, they are multidimensional, ultra-terrestrial life forms that can be summoned or deployed by powerful incorporeal intelligences anchored to our physical plane. In this framework, such entities function as sentinels or watchers, serving the intentions of the summoning intelligence. I believe Jeff and Crystal encountered the ancient earthbound entity during the EVP session at the bunker and unknowingly allowed it to attach itself to them. This type of attachment is not uncommon, particularly among inexperienced and unprotected investigators. Such energies can follow individuals, causing psychological, physical, and environmental disturbances unless properly addressed. And for this reason, protective measures had to be implemented before any further investigation work could proceed. And prior to my involvement, Jeff described a steady escalation of disturbing phenomena. After capturing voices during the EVP session, both he and Crystal were shocked and in disbelief. They fell silent as they struggled to process what had happened. Before that moment, their lives had been entirely normal, with no unusual activity. But once the disturbances began, the manifestations grew increasingly aggressive. Cabinets opened on their own, dishes shattered, objects appeared in impossible locations, including a spoon found in the bed. One of the most disturbing phenomena was the appearance of a strange substance throughout the home. It was sticky, earthen in texture, similar to thick mud, and appeared without warning. On one occasion, Crystal was stuck in the back by the substance as it manifested behind her and seemingly from nothing. Laboratory analysis later confirmed that the material was plant-based, though no explanation was ever found for its origin and repeated appearance. As the couple researched the Mothman legend, they discovered that the events surrounding Point Pleasant extended far beyond a single winged figure. Reports from the late 1960s included unexplained phone calls and visits from men claiming to be government agents, poltergeist activity, and a surge of UFO sightings. Their own experience closely mirrored these historical accounts. Despite attempts to rationalize the phenomena, no plausible non-paranormal explanation fit the evidence. The bunkers are isolated, acoustically reflective structures. Any human presence would have been immediately detectable. The voices captured on the recordings lacked echo entirely, defying the known acoustic properties of the environment. Believing that they were communicating with an ancient intelligence associated with the Mothman phenomena, the couple returned to the bunker to establish further contact. And at the time, they did not feel threatened. Instead, they felt chosen. That perception would later prove dangerously misguided. After months of escalating activity, I worked directly with the family to clear the disrupted energies and sever the attachments affecting both the home, and the individuals themselves. And by early summer 2017, the case was resolved. Now, notably, my involvement with the Drenning case coincided with the beginning of my investigation into Chicago winged humanoid sightings. The patterns observed in West Virginia would later inform my broader conclusions about the nature of these entities and the role as manifestations of deeper unseen intelligences. Now, the Drenning case stands as one of the most formative investigations of my career, illustrating how encounters with unknown can extend far beyond a single sighting, and how some forces, once acknowledged, do not easily go away. Now, that encounter or account anchors the episode in your investigative framework. The wing entity behaves like a deliberate roadblock, not a random animal. The later attachment phenomena, the EVP intelligence, and poltergeist activity overlap mere classic Point Pleasant era patterns: contact, escalation, harassment, the sense of being targeted. The summoned sentinel theory becomes the connective tissue. In this model, the winged being is not the prime mover. It is the instrument deployed by the intelligence that remains most unseen. Now, we started tonight with a quiet bedroom encounter, a young witness feeling a weight on the bed that's seeing a man who called himself Felix and promised protection without explanation. We moved into the wilderness where a hiker was shadowed by something that smelled of decay, saw eyes in the distance, ran in fear, and then entered a clearing where the calm man with bright green eyes offered rest, fire, tea, and safety. We heard about the towering antlered sentinels near Traverse City, beings that circled in calm silence until the witness ignored their warnings, and time itself slipped sideways. We visited the northern Cheyenne Hills of 1986, where a small green humanoid pursued children but stopped at an invisible boundary, and where an antlered deer man drove campers away with stone throwing before watching them flee. We widened the lenses with native traditions that treat forest beings not as a myth, but as a long-standing presence governed by rules, territory, consequence, and also protection. We returned to a bedroom in south central Pennsylvania with 4 tall insect-like beings appeared through walls, projected compassion, and reportedly sent one message into a frightful mind: do not be scared. These stories do not agree on autonomy. They do not agree on form, and they converge on behavior. Sometimes something watches, something enforces boundaries, something intervenes. If these are guardians, then they are threats we do not see. If these are sentinels, then there are borders that we do not recognize until we cross them. And if they are both, then the world is far more crowded than what we want to believe. If you have had an encounter with a protector and a warning presence or a sentinel event that changed the atmosphere around you, please reach out to me through the Phantoms and Monsters contact link on the website. Because one thing is certain, not all encounters are meant to harm you. Sometimes something just steps in. And you never learn what it saved you from. So, folks, I'll take your questions. All caps, please. And we'll see if we can answer these things. Dagnammit. Ghost hunters looking for spirits will sometimes find this black ectoplasm goo oozing from walls of abandoned buildings. It occasionally happens. I have never had a case where that happened, other than this thing with the Drennings. Now, I don't know what that was. It was plant-based, but we never really found out why it showed up or what the reason was, but it was clearly associated with the phenomenon itself. Any other questions, folks? No questions? Well, I guess I explained it well then. Now, I do want to tell you, if you do have suggestions for shows, please feel free to contact me through the website. That's anybody that's listening to the show. If you have any range of encounters that you want me to discuss here or, to examine, let me know. Marla, can doppelgangers be both good and evil? I think a lot of times the doppelgangers don't even know that they are a doppelganger. Quite frankly, I don't think there's. I don't think many times they have a distinction what they are. They just show up and they look like somebody else that you have been acquainted with, and it's just a weird phenomenon, but it does happen. And I really haven't sensed any evil at all with doppelgangers. Dragus Prod or Prude, have you had any reports on giant salamanders or bats lately, Lon? Nothing recently. Just older accounts. Salamanders? No, I can't recall. Other than actual supposed cryptid type animals or amphibians. But those are known to us, so nothing cryptid. Dagnammit, in 1978, 3 paranormal ghost investigators investigating the Ursuline convent in New Orleans went missing. Yeah, well, I know partially about that encounter, but I don't know the whole details. If you do, send it to me. How's everything going with you? Liz is in here tonight. Glad you're here, Liz. Thanks for coming. Anything else, folks, before we end this? Dragus Prode was looking at maybe some new reports from the upper West Coast on that. Yeah, I haven't... Oh my God! Thank you, Liz. I appreciate the donation. It's very much appreciated. That upper coast area. I mean, the Pacific Northwest. I don't know of anything. I have had a few wing beings, but nothing of consequence. I've talked about those several times, but nothing related to anything other than just a sighting of something that people couldn't understand. We had a few in California. I love you too, Liz. Thank you again. Anything else, folks? I know you're all probably shocked by the donations. Yeah, Dragus Pod said, last I heard of any of that was from JC. Yeah, JC had a lot of strange stories. I never got all of them, unfortunately. My friend JC passed away before we got to talk about everything. I do have a lot of his investigations, and maybe I'll start posting them again and maybe do some shows about it. Be more. Thanks, Lon. Always good to hear about the positive side of the paranormal. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's not always gloom and doom. Can someone tell him to wait? What's that all about? Dragish Prod. He and Jack Terry did a lot about that. If I can get Jack to do a cryptid update, I'll invite you. That's okay. Me and Jack, I'll be honest with you, me and Jack had a falling out not long after JC left or passed away. So if it's all the same, I don't want to deal with Jack. Just saying. Okay, well, again, I want to thank you all for coming in here tonight. It's much appreciated. Thanks for all the donations. They're all appreciated as well. And, if all I can say is we'll see you next Friday night. Now, what I am going to be doing is trying to get an interview or two on Wednesday nights, maybe on Friday night, but Wednesday nights. I know Cosmic Ray wants to come on and talk about some things he's been involved with, so maybe I'll get him to come in here as well. But again, stay alert, stay safe, and as always, keep looking into the unexplained. Have a great weekend, stay warm, and have a good night. Talk later.